So, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have Andrew and Elise here from MGI Research with me today. So grateful to have them as an Automates research partner. We want to be able to continue providing valuable insights on market trends and solutions. This one is near and dear to my heart because I'm a big RevRec dork and love this stuff. So for those who don't know me, I'm M. Daigle, founder and chief automation officer at OTTO-MATES. If you don't know much about us, I'd encourage you to join, but we are a community and network of accounting and finance professionals, and we focus all our collaboration and discussions around exploring and learning everything we can about AI and automation, really to help modernize our day-to-day worlds in finance. Before we get started, just a couple of very quick housekeeping items. We have about 45 minutes today. Elise and Andrew are going to walk us through the recent results of their automated revenue management buyer's guide and the 360 ratings. Having read through it all, I'm sure you'll have a bunch of questions. So please either drop them here in the chat or you can chat them directly to me if you'd like to submit a question anonymously as we go. And then we're going to reserve the last 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A so we can get to those. We all know that revenue operations just seem to be getting more and more complicated, and revenue teams are definitely feeling it. I think with billing models seem to be multiplying, contracts are evolving, getting far more complex. Compliance is tightening, so somehow that margin of error seems to be getting smaller, even though all the complexity is getting bigger. So at this point, I believe having the right revenue automation platform isn't really just like a nice tool to have, but it really does separate the teams who actually can support growth from the teams who are constantly fighting those uphill battles with risk, visibility, and in reality, just trying to keep up. So again, that's why I'm excited to have Andrew and Elise here so we can get a clear view of the landscape along the lines of who's leading, who's emerging, what capabilities actually matter, and then where the market is headed. So with that, I'd love to pass it over to Andrew and Elise so they can introduce themselves and then take us into the findings. Andrew, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Thanks, Em. And it's a real pleasure and a delight to join you and the Automates community.
Yes.
Um, we love being a part of this community.
Melissa?
So
Oh,
I'm Andrew Daly, one of the principals at MGI Research. I'm joined by my colleague Elise Talley, who's a senior research analyst at MGI, and we'll be walking through the results of a multi-month research effort, and it's something that we do on a continuous basis, and then periodically publish these tomes, if you will, really deep analysis on what's going on in what we characterize as the automated revenue management space. Revenue recognition is a subset of what we consider to be part of ARM. So with that, let's get rolling. First of all, those of you who don't know MGI Research, we are an independent research and advisory firm. We focus on disruptive areas of technology and business with a particular focus in the office of the CFO, things related to finance and money. And within that, we've came up with a reference architecture, what we call an agile monetization platform, or how companies monetize. Revenue automation fits within that. And we work with small to very large sized user organizations. We provide research to technology suppliers, typically boards of directors and executive teams. And then we also sell research and services to institutional investors. And as part of the Automates community, everyone who's on this call and in the community will get access to this report. And we would love to have your feedback. As analysts, we view our job as a process. It doesn't end when we publish something. It really begins there. And the dialogue and the feedback that we get from everyone in the marketplace is really critical to helping us provide the best information possible, the best analysis that we can produce in the market. So, with that, what's in this guide very quickly? Uh, it's essentially everything that an organization needs to understand what's going on in the market for automated revenue management. Number one. Number two, it's everything needed to build the business case for investing uh, in ARM. And M, as you highlighted at the opening, this is a marketplace that a number of years ago, everyone, including a number of the suppliers, even thought was going to go away. Everyone said, hey, ASC 606 is going to come along, people are going to buy some tools, and then this market will basically kind of fade into, you know, not doing so much. There are more suppliers than ever in this space. There's more investment pouring into this market. And if you look at, for example, a number of the, let's call them traditional ERP vendors, we'll talk about them, they're re-upping their investment in this space. So far from going away, having automated tools to help organizations and individuals like everybody on this call has become more important than ever. Uh, and when you step back from it and you say, with all of the complexity in business, with all of the innovation that's taking place around pricing models and revenue models, and the scale of businesses today, when you look at how fast even startups are able to scale so quickly, you say the only way we're going to be able to do revenue recognition and really revenue automation is through proper tooling. And so it's these suppliers that we're going to walk through, and they're a part of this report um, that you'll be able to say, hey, here's what I need to understand the market, see where the trends are going, benchmark what you have versus what's best in class today, build a business case if you want or need to. And then also we have a couple unique to MGI research, what we call market lenses, which is ways to look at the market, perspectives in a market and the suppliers that we found in working with user organizations that are very helpful in terms of understanding how different suppliers fit and what's the best fit for a particular organization. So, first of all, what's changing in this market? What's happening that's new and interesting and that users should be aware of? Uh, the first thing that comes through is what used to be edge cases are now becoming the mainstream. So what used to be the 5 to 7% of contracts that would be done manually because they were so complicated, or the changes that were taking midterm that had to be done manually, those are becoming the mainstream norm. And you look at the complexity of revenue mix, uh, that's not a one-off kind of thing. Usage and consumption models, for example, that's not a one-off thing. Just as when subscriptions came out, those are here to stay, and usage and consumption is here to stay as well.
Yeah. Andrew, if I can also add to that, I think even if you don't necessarily have those today, you could have them as early or as soon as tomorrow. Like you mentioned, everything moving so quickly. And I think when people are like, well, I don't have those edge cases, probably now more than ever with like AI moving things along so quickly, I see go-to-market teams coming up with either new offerings or sales teams trying to figure out how to actually sell some things and getting more creative with it. And so it's creating all of these additional edge cases, to your point.
Completely. It's what we've seen is, first of all, everybody thought 606, well, that just really applies to software companies. If you ask today in the end of 2025, who's not a software company today? Everyone is a software company. So even industrials, manufacturing companies, everybody's a software business.
Cars. I mean, cars are basically computers on the road now. Everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, and then on top of that, who's not infusing AI into their product offerings? Again, it cuts across every type of industry, every type of business or organization. And so as a consequence, to your point, that's driving all this complexity. So even if an organization's not doing it today, the instant your competitor comes out with something, or the instant your sales teams get creative, you're going to need better tooling. And that's what's really fueling this market. So let's jump into the ratings. Elise, do you want to describe, just give us some context about how does MGI go about doing ratings of suppliers?
Yeah, so our proprietary ratings use our industry-leading quantitative framework to evaluate each vendor on 5 different equally weighted dimensions, each scored from 0 to 20. So first is product. We look at the strength of the product's competitive position, which really includes everything from product innovation, functional breadth and depth, roadmap execution, and customer feedback. Second is management. We assess the depth, the competence, and the operational experience of the leadership team and the other key players within their business. Third is channel. This measures the efficiency and efficacy of the sales team and the size of their partner network. Fourth is strategy. We evaluate whether a company has a coherent competitive strategy, how well positioned the company is, and how likely that company is to really execute the strategy that they've put forth. And finally, we have finance. This takes into account factors like company size, growth, profitability, and the overall just financial health of the company. In total, there's over 149 criteria that we use to evaluate those vendors, and they all carry equal weight, which really gives us a balanced view of each vendor's short and long-term potential. And overall, just in these very unpredictable economic times, we're really encouraging prospective buyers to account for a vendor's viability, not just the product fit. So businesses really need to monitor the financial health, the growth trajectory, and really the strategic clarity of their vendors in the event that, there's an ownership change or forced migrations in the future.
Absolutely.
Now we're getting into some of the key results from the ratings. As you can see, we have these letter grades on the screen. The MGI scale is really harsh in nature, so we want to provide these letter grades to help share that, where a company might have gotten a 60, which sounds bad on a scale of 1 to 100, that might also be an A in the ARM ratings. These are divided by quartiles, so the people at that top quartile received an A rating. So as you all can see, RightRev, SAP, Workday, and Zora received A ratings. Notably, as an update, RightRev and SAP were upgraded to a positive analyst outlook. However, I think the most important thing that we want people to take away is every vendor named here is consequential in the market, and even the honorable mentions really deserve and warrant your attention. You might even wonder why we, include a B- vendor or the honorable mentions, and it's because they're likely doing something that's unique, differentiated, and potentially really innovating in a niche area of the market that we want to call attention to. Therefore, as a part of this process, we really encourage buyers to begin their vendor selection process by evaluating their use case. So, for example, if you're a small to mid-sized business looking for an agile solution and you have modest business and RevRec complexity, a Chargebee or Maxio is likely going to be a better fit for you than Zora or Workday, even though Zora and Workday got those A letter grade rankings. And, if you look into the report, in every vendor's rating, we do present our view of each company's ideal customer profile. And in our experience, that really leads to the most project and implementation success. The other thing that I'll just note before we move on is that Rillet and Tabs were upgraded this year from honorable mentions to MGI 360 rated vendors. We consistently hear about them, and buyers are showing interest in AI native products, so we felt it was important to include them. While both companies are young, vendors should really pay close attention to understand where the market's headed, how to keep pace with these AI entrants, as they're really popping up in every software market that we cover.
Absolutely. And if we take a look at this, this is another way to break down all the scores. So you see the individual component scores between finance, strategy, channels, management, and product. Because of the quantitative nature of our rating scale, a number of these areas, if you take finance, for example, roughly 95% of that finance score is purely quant based. There's no analyst opinion whatsoever involved. It's purely how is this vendor doing in terms of profitability, in terms of balance sheet strength. And so the numbers are the numbers. Similarly, when we look at something like channels, you'll see that some of the larger suppliers, the Oracles, the Workdays, the SAPs, are going to naturally score higher just by the sheer size of their channel. And conversely, a startup like a Roulette or a Tabs or a growth stage company like, say, RightRev or Billing Platform, RightRev, Billing Platform, or growing businesses with strong products, they don't have channels the same size as, say, an Oracle, right? So you see that reflected in the total score, and in particular in the channel score. So depending on how you're looking at a supplier, the breakdown of these scores matters, because you could be looking at someone saying, I'm buying very tactically. And in that case, you'd say, give me a supplier with a really strong product score, and I don't care necessarily where they're going to be in 5 years. Whereas if you look at it more strategically, saying, I'm going to be with this supplier 5, 6, 7 years from now, in that case, it's not just what's in the product today, but you're really buying into the company, the team, their ability to remain competitive in the market and to deliver on what's in their roadmap. And so the broader set of scores kind of has should take higher precedence when you weight these things. So this is the top 5. Everybody on this call, like I said, you'll have access to be able to download the report and see everyone on this. And we would encourage you, as Elise said, to really take a look at what's your specific use case, and start from there, and then start looking at what's the right fit. Because a company could score, a 65, or they could score a 40. The most important thing is, can they meet your use case or not, right? Because there's plenty of examples where companies that have relatively modest scores, if they meet your use case and they're the right fit for your organization, then that's absolutely the way to go, versus looking at it from an absolute scale, as these ratings do.
Yeah, just to, if you can
Sorry, go ahead.
I would maybe just add to everything that you said. Zuora came out with that top spot at 65, but if you look, the range goes all the way down to 39. So we're really seeing
That's
such
right.
a wide spread in this market. And another thing I'd just call attention to is we saw roughly half the vendors actually decrease their ratings in this cycle. And so we're really seeing that top half is innovating at 2 to 3 times the speed of some of the bottom vendors. And we're really seeing them not just slowing down, but really regressing in terms of not keeping pace with where the market is. And one other thing I would just add is that RightRev came out as most improved. They really just have a lot going for them currently in terms of they now are one of the most scalable products on the market. And they handle a really wide range of revenue and business complexity, from SSP calculations to managing contract modifications and really complex multi-element arrangements. And we'd also just call attention to RecView, GoTransverse, Zora, they're all really making strides to improve their products.
I like that. And I like the commentary around the fact that so many are actually regressing. And so it's really creating a wider gap in the market for those that are strategic and growing, which is probably, maybe I'm leading you right into the next
Thank
slide, I
you.
think. I saw just when you went ahead real quick too, but
Right.
I think it really is like widening that gap, because unless companies are putting the time, effort, resources, and everything behind like roadmap and growth and strategy, it really does start to show the wide range in it.
Yeah, and you'll see, I mean, we mentioned this at the outset, we have some different lenses that we put on the market. This one, we take the go-to-market strength, um, and compare that, which is really product, which is everything but product, right? So management, finance, channel, um, uh, and compare that to the product score and plot everybody this way. So this is one way of looking at the market. Uh, Another way is if you break the solutions down and say, let's look at agility, right? So we define agility in really simple terms. You say, how easy is it to stand up a solution, and how easy is it to make changes to that solution, manage it over time? So the most agile solutions, you or I or anyone off the street could basically come in with a nominal amount of training and start to engage with these products, set them up, and start using them, right? That's the definition of high agility. Very low agility says, I need a number of very high paid, hard to find resources that specifically know the complexity, that know this product and can help me stand it up and make changes if I want to make changes to that product.
Having
Similar,
had, sorry to interrupt, Andrew,
go ahead.
having been somebody in this space, both from a user perspective and then also helping teams to adopt and implement these, I think the agility aspect of it is so critical, not just to get those tools in place, but then the ongoing, like we talked about earlier, with the increasing complexity and being able to handle all of these things, having that ability to also change as you go forward and support that business growth that you're experiencing is also hugely critical. So it's exciting to see the agility aspects getting, or it is widening, but to see these front runners come out, because I think that's really a critical component.
Yeah, and the reality is for a lot of organizations, they don't have a huge team and they don't have a big IT department to call upon, and they don't have a budget to call out to expensive external resources. So you need a high agility solution. And the reality is, even if a product has all the functionality in the world, you'll never be able to consume it, right? And similarly, you can look at this and say, hey, I want a really a solution that can handle a lot of revenue and business complexity. So when we talk about complexity and map these things, it's how complex is the revenue and the revenue management requirement, right? How many different sales motions are you supporting? A whole variety of factors go into how we look at complexity. And similarly, you could look at it and say, hey, going and selling into a really large organization, going and selling into an Apple or a Google and supporting a company of that scale is fundamentally different than selling into a $50 million software company. And how you engage with one of those large companies, right, is fundamentally different.
Very, very much different. Like those are opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right, exactly. So another lens, at least if you want to comment on this, is how we look at agility and volume.
Yeah, no, I think this one, honestly, we see pretty similar results to the agility versus complexity lens of, there is a company like a Maxio who is a very agile solution, and they're meant for a very certain buyer who would, shy away from, an SAP or Oracle, for example. And then you also see someone like GoTransverse who, as we were saying, has really made a lot of progress in the last year or two and has really been investing in what their product can handle for their customers. And then you also see someone in the middle of a workday who sort of balances the two. And again, I think it ultimately goes back to what we constantly reiterate, which is, define your use case and go from there in terms of the vendor that you select.
And then, of course, there's complexity versus volume. So, and this is where you really see the gap in the market, or the distinction in the market between the solutions that can handle a lot of volume and a lot of complexity, and the solutions that are really oriented towards low to modest amounts of revenue complexity, low to modest amounts of business complexity. They're probably operating in one country, in one currency, have a uh, are selling, say, B2C or B2C only, or have B2B business, but they're not negotiated deals, right? That's a big difference versus somebody that has a business where they're selling B2C, B2B through a channel, with all types of revenue arrangements and negotiated deals and a lot of change in the middle of the deals.
Mm-hmm. That's what I like to see, though. Like, you really can, as you're going through all of this, you can really start to see where there are solutions that you should be looking at based on your individual circumstances. Because to your point, Andrew, and Elise, you were talking about it as well, like you may have high volume and low complexity. You might have high volume, high complexity. You might, and knowing how you sell, knowing your business models, understanding the complexity, where you're headed is where you can really start to parse out like which are the vendors I should really start evaluating, because when you see all the vendors together, it's completely overwhelming. And I think we can all appreciate right now the barrier to entry is so low in the market that we're just getting inundated with new vendors. And so I think what this does is really helpful to show who the vendors are in various areas that should be evaluated based on your needs.
That's right. And to add to that, it's also a question of how much domain expertise are you looking for, right? Because there's a big difference between Azora, say an SAP. SAP's CFO sits on a number, like sits on the IFRS committee and is helping write the standards, right? So they have folks on staff that really understand revenue automation at a detailed level in large, complex organizations. Again, if you're a small, mid-sized business, who cares, right? You don't necessarily need that or care about that. So it's a question of getting the right fit. The other thing I'd add here in all of the commentary is, um, there's a real difference between the ERP vendors who have core financials and revenue automation as, let's say, an add-on, and who are investing in that, investing in ARM, versus the ERP vendors that have some ARM capability. They often give it away in deals and are not investing in the product. Um, there's a pretty wide gap, and you see that here pretty clearly in this market lens.
Yeah.
I think we have some time. Do you want to? We could take some questions.
Yeah, definitely. So I absolutely, everyone probably, or anyone who knows me knows that I have no qualms coming up with questions, but, and I did get a couple here. I think, one question I've gotten, not just here on this call, but that when the report first came out and people were seeing everything on LinkedIn, a question I kept getting, and maybe some are thinking it here, is so you guys do this report and you refer to RevRec and ARM almost kind of like interchangeably, right? So is there a line dividing those two? How do you think of those two, or do you think of them as one and the same?
Elise, do you want to answer it? I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think I can start and then you can add on. We sort of see ARM as an umbrella term, and RevRec sort of falls beneath that of uh ARM really encapsulates, the entire aspect of revenue management and automating that.
Okay.
Andrea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
if you think about revenue recognition,
Hmm.
you alluded to this earlier. Like there's a lot of entry billing solutions today or quoting tools that have basic revenue recognition capability, right? Which is let's go through the five-step process and basically set up a really simple revenue schedule, right?
Hmm.
That's different than how do we ingest a lot of different data types, right? Different data sources coming in at different velocities. How do we mediate that data and then start to set up revenue schedules and do everything else that's involved in revenue accounting? So when we think about automated revenue management, we're looking at that broader set of capabilities, like mediation as an example, that you're going to need as a tool overall.
And I think that's an important comparison too, because like I know I even throw around RevRec very
Right.
nonchalantly, and it can be used. It's almost like using Kleenex for tissues sometimes, right? Like people just kind of like use that term, but it does, like when you really break it down, what does it entail? And if it's the revenue recognition piece of it, that's the calculation. But there's a whole process
Yeah.
around it. There's data inputs. You've got everything that you need around it, and so many dependencies that really do make a difference there. So thank you for that. And I think that'll be helpful to everybody who's asked me the question as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I do have the AI question just because this is another one that is a hot topic in
Right.
the community. But everyone's kind of like, okay, so I get emails nonstop. I see all of these AI native or AI first vendors who are pitching like, oh, we can do your accounting and rev rec. We can do all of this for you because AI is making it more available. And of course, they come in and the price point is much lower, maybe because they're trying to buy the business, or maybe it really is cheaper for them. But curious from your perspective after going through all of this, like how seriously should we all be looking at these new vendors as they're coming out and the newer solutions? Because there's so many of them, and I think some of them really can be strong, and I've seen some examples of that. But curious from your perspective how you guys are kind of viewing those.
Well, so first a broader comment on this market, which applies not only to the quote unquote AI first companies, but overall. Free is not free. So when someone is selling you software and saying, hey, it's free or nearly free, you have to ask yourself, am I going to bet my job?
Yeah.
And, revenue recognition is one of those things where you can't get it wrong. Like you can screw up a CRM implementation. You can do all kinds of misdeeds in implementing, other systems.
Yeah.
You can't screw up revenue accounting, right?
Yeah.
People like end up in jail, they lose their licenses, serious things happen, there are consequences.
Hmm.
So, do you want the free solution or do you want the best fit, most appropriate solution? That's one comment. The
You
second
get
is
what you pay for, right?
a
If
hundred
you're not paying
percent
anything, you're not getting much.
right.
Yeah.
Uh, the second is um, we tell all our clients uh, everyone should be looking at these AI companies and looking at what are the use cases that they're going after and how are they thinking about addressing revenue accounting with AI. And there's a lot we can all learn. We can learn, first of all, what not to do, but we
Yeah.
can also look at what are the areas where maybe you don't need a third-party solution. It's something that you could be doing yourselves,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I think there's a lot we can all learn and see from the experience that these companies are going through. The third comment would be uh, also kind of foundational, which is there's a real difference between probabilistic and deterministic outcomes.
Yeah,
And even when you go talk to the roulettes and the campfires and all these guys, and they'll all say, hey, there is actually a need for some deterministic outcomes. Like you need to have solutions, particularly in doing, revenue calculations, where when you put a certain, set of data in, 100% of the time you're going to get the same output, right? And there's no deviation from that. And so I think what we're going to see over time is this mix of some of these quote unquote AI first solutions that come at it with a Gen AI approach to certain things. And there's certainly some, plenty of use cases where you say, hey, that would be beneficial. But when it comes time to uh, crunch the numbers, so to speak, you want to have a, a consistent outcome 100% of the time.
absolutely. You need that, right? Like that's auditability is being able to arrive at the same results and prove that every which way to Sunday and be able to recalculate that. And I think to your point, like the probabilistic versus deterministic, there are still very rigid rules from a finance perspective, as there should be, because this is an area where it is more black and white, and you do have rev rec policies for a reason because you need to be able to apply those same policies across all of your transactions regardless, right? Like you can't pick and choose. You can't have some sort of probabilistic outcome where, it probably lands in this area or something to that extent. And you really do need to make sure that these are fully auditable. Um, I think another thing that's really important, and as especially in the automates community, and what we hear a lot is people having real conversations about either from a customer perspective, like what does their customer base look like? And of course, everyone needs to start somewhere. But I think you can really see and understand a bit more if you talk to some of those folks about what it is that they're solving. So maybe it's not that they are using AI to, let's hope not necessarily calculate the revenue recognition, but maybe it's like these are some of the examples I've seen is being able to use it to read through contracts and be able to identify some of those non-standard components that then, yes, need to have that have an impact on the rev rec outputs. But that's where I think it's still so critical to have like that human in the loop to make sure that you've got the checks and balances and somebody that really is making sure that if you are going with those AI capabilities, that they are turning out the appropriate output.
100%. And you have to match your use case to the customer base of a supplier that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Just because a supplier has, let's say, a dozen AI startups, no matter how sexy those AI startups are, their business is probably not like yours,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So you really need to look at how do you do things and who are the suppliers that have a customer base that mirrors how you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Spot
think
on.
building on that, the AI entrants, are they putting pricing pressure on the bottom end of the market? Definitely yes. But are they going to replace your ERP? Are they going to replace the highly complex rev rec companies that, do in that top quadrant? No, like that's not happening tomorrow. So I think to just add on to everything Andrew said, it's every vendor should be paying attention to the AI entrants to understand where they should be innovating. We are seeing it in customer conversations that every customer expects their vendor to have an AI story and to be talking about, next steps. So it is table stakes for vendors to compete in that, but are these AI entrants going to overtake the market tomorrow? I think the answer is almost definitively no.
No, yeah, exactly. As it should be.
We'll see.
That should be the answer. Agreed. Okay. I do have another question that came through anonymously to me. This one's around the fact that lots of vendors are claiming they can reduce close cycles or close times. Based on your research and what you guys have kind of gone through here, how valid do you consider those types of claims to be? And is that maybe like the most impactful? I'm adding this last part on. Maybe is that the most impactful uh, value point to folks, or like obviously we've talked through. There's a number of things that they should be considering, but curious from your perspective and the comments around like the time to close impact it has. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I think your second comment or question is actually a really good one, um, which is it the most impactful thing that we see? Um, Actually, the most impactful thing that we see is people having, when you do, as we've done, hundreds of interviews and conversations with customers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what you see is the biggest impact is having confidence. Everyone in the organization gains more confidence in the numbers. And can you put it, and that's a intangible thing, right? Can you say, what's the value of that in dollar terms? I can't put a dollar term on that. Do we all know from experience what that's worth? It's priceless,
Yeah, yep.
right?
It's like the
Um,
MasterCard commercial.
Completely. It's priceless. The second thing you see is that, and it comes through, is organizations are able to they're able to say scale revenue
Mhm.
50 to 100, 200% without having to add more headcount. And is that a benefit? And to have more confidence in the numbers. So what's the price of that? That's also something that's everybody wants today. And it's true. We're seeing, if you said, is this actually demonstrated in the results? Completely, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and then to your very first question, do we really see people closing and reducing the close cycle? We do. It's not just an empty software vendor claim, of which there are plenty in the market. That's something we see almost 100% of the time.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, could you say, is it the tool? Is it because the organization put focus around the process and re-engineered things? There's a whole variety of things. But listen, if you can use a technology solution as a vehicle to drive organizational change and you cut your close time by a day or two or more, that has meaningful value.
Absolutely. And I think if there's one takeaway, I know we're up on time and I've got a couple other questions that just came in too. So I will commit to having all of these included. We'll get your answers on it. So when we post it in the community, everybody can see your answers as well, because I know we're out of time here. But I think overall, in your last answer, Andrew, and kind of like the comments I would say that I've kind of taken away, or the themes from this session, is really that there's not a one size fits all answer here. And it really does depend on your use cases, what your biggest challenges are, and what your goals at the end of the day really are for your own organization, because it changes drastically based on where you're working, what your role is, all of those things. And so I think it's a critical component, and so happy that you were able to share this with us today, and that you were gracious enough to be able to open this up for the OTTO-MATES community as well. We'll be sure to get everybody a copy of these slides. Andrew and Elise, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And excited. We have some kind of new cool surveys that we've been talking about that should be coming out shortly. So would also like to tease that one out there as well, and get everybody kind of ready and open to sharing that with everyone and get some results. And then we'll share that feedback as well.
Thanks, Em,
Thank you
and
for
thanks,
having us.
everyone.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Have a
Appreciate
great
your
day.
time.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye.